And the story that really captured my attention today was the one that Christy Blatchard did in the National Post, and she started off this morning on More in the Morning on the roundtable as she's a regular panelist, and they were talking about a ruling by Justice David Brown in talking about the blockades over the Christmas holidays, and he was very, very critical of the Sarnia Police and of the OPP. I read the column, and I understand the point of view, and it's popular to sort of get frustrated with the Aboriginal and First Nations issue, but I right away read the column, having covered a lot of things in the field and still do, that I knew it was wrong. I knew that there was a real cheap shot towards police and a real misunderstanding of what police do and that kind of thing. And I'm not saying that I haven't been guilty of that before. You get emotional, and I understand that. So I reached out to Commissioner Chris Lewis to find out a little bit more about what went on down there. I also talked to Sarnia's chief as well, Phil Nelson. And we're lucky to have Commissioner Lewis with us tonight. Welcome back to the Late Shift, Commissioner.
Hi, Joe.
Really good to talk to you. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. How was your first Christmas with that little baby boy?
Well, you know what? It was fantastic. It was. It's funny how you really don't realize what you've missed out on until you go through it, and it gets better and better all the time.
Okay.
And I know he's listening to the show, and whenever I do radio, that kind of thing, he listens closely when I'm walking around the house, talking all serious. He gets excited. Maybe he's going to be a newsman. I don't know, but
or a cop. You never know.
Well, you know what? that'd be quite a proud thing if it happened. Actually, I've joined here with Ross Mclean from RossMcleanSecurity.com, who's actually done quite a bit of media today. He's a former Toronto copper, and he's going to help me with some of these issues. He may have a question for you, too, Commissioner. But let's start off. I've written my column. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. It's on TorontoSun.ca.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
It's up. It should be up there now. If it's up there, folks, let me know, or you can favorite it and give it a read. And you read Christie's column today, and you've heard my take on it, and I explained it to you when we talked this morning, and now we talk now. But basically, what maybe you can help us a little bit to understand when you're in these situations, the police, whether it's the Sarnia Police or the OPP, are not directed by a politician, whether it be the Premier, the Prime Minister, or a judge. They can't just call down or order and say, this is what you're going to do.
No, it's certainly not like that. In terms of the politician piece, there's lots of accusations back in the 90s about government interfering with the police and ordering them what to do. I wasn't there at the time, but I know over the last 10 or so years that has never been an issue for us with the government of Ontario. At any time, even though some reporters have suggested that it is the case, it's not. When it comes to a judge, we have had cases right back to 2006 in Caledonia where judges have ordered the sheriff to take action and really serve an injunction on occupiers or protesters. And it's the sheriff's job to do that. It's our job to if requested by the sheriff, to attend and keep the peace. In the case recently in Sarnia, I don't want to speak on behalf of Phil Nelson, the chief there, but certainly he was in touch with some of our folks, given our experience in all this. The court ordered or put an injunction forward to have those protesters removed from that railway. Chief Nelson decided operationally not to do it at that time for whatever reasons, and I support that decision. And we decided at different times not to do that, and have been supported right up to the Ontario Court of Appeal in that decision.
Well, here's the thing. Whatever you decide, and as a pundit and a critic, columnist, I can sit back and I can criticize police, and I have and I should. But in this case, the way that I read it is that the problem was solved. No one was hurt. It took a little longer than, say, a judge would like or reporters would like, but no one was hurt. It didn't go on for 6 months. It went on for a week, and it was dealt with. Now, here's what the judge said, and this was some of this is out of Christie's column and other columns. It says, "I am shocked by such disrespect shown to this court by Sarnia Police," and he also went after you as well, Commissioner, where he said that the OPP where's that quote? He really went after the OPP as well.
Yeah.
And he said, such an approach by the OPP was most disappointing because it undercut the practical effect of the injunction order. that kind of passivity by police leads me to doubt that a future exists in the province for the use of court injunctions in cases of public demonstrations. Sounds ominous, but Commissioner, is that fair assessment from Justice Brown?
I don't think it is. I mean, he has his opinion. He's more learned in the law than I, but the Ontario Court of Appeal in 2006 said we had discretion to exercise our own judgment in terms of when the right time and place would be to enforce the injunction. And so we're totally supported. And you know what? Just because a judge who's sitting somewhere and signs some papers based on whatever orders an injunction, that doesn't mean that an operational commander on the ground that's faced with a myriad of issues, intelligence information, threats, and much more than the judge or the media or anyone will ever really truly understand, when that incident commander makes a decision, that's just the way it's going to be.
And the thing is, there's children down there, and these are very complicated. I covered Ipperwash.
Kids, elderly people, women, people in wheelchairs. It's not just a bunch of 20-year-olds standing around with sticks in their hands. This is a lot broader than that. And the public, and I don't blame the public for being concerned. I get that, and our job is to make sure they have access to streets and railways, et cetera, as well. But we got to do all that in a way that balances out our discretion and the reasonableness of using force when we know something's going to be over in an hour or two anyway. Why would you want to hurt somebody or have anybody killed or any officers hurt? It's just not worth it.
I agree with you. It says, this is a quote from you out of my column, and maybe you could reiterate it. It says, this is what you told me earlier, I'm not going to tell a young OPP widow that her deceased police husband gave his life to open the tracks when we knew that in a few hours they would be open anyway.
That's right, and it's a real pain for the people that are trying to use the roadway or the railway. It's a pain for CN or CP Rail or whoever owns the piece of property. But the bottom line is it's a trespassing or a mischief offense. So are we going to risk lives of the public, elderly First Nations people that are protesting, women and children, and police officers, when we know 2 or 3 hours from now it's going to be open? And any action we take, there will be a reaction. So if Phil Nelson took action in Sarnia, in all probability, all these other idle protests that are going on right across Canada would have escalated, and we could have technically, possibly, shut down every major highway, railway, every trade route in this entire country. And is that worth it?
And so we've talked about that, shutting it down. We know they're capable of that, or anybody, when you escalate it instead of de-escalating it. We also talked about, people that could die and be hurt, and on both sides, and no one was. To me, and I can say this as a critic and a pundit, I think that the Sarnia Police, particularly Chief Nelson, did a tremendous job here. He knows his community. He's been a police officer for almost 40 years there.
That's right.
And, I know you don't always see it eye to eye there with, I know there's been some conflict between Sarnia. There was some talk about maybe going towards the OPP, that kind of thing, but that didn't
political decisions, nothing between us as police officers.
Right, but the other thing that needs to be said, and Ross Mclean and I will talk about it later, but this terrible murder down there of Noel Paquette, they're busy down in Sarnia, and they don't deserve this from the justice. And I understand his emotion, and I know he's a good judge and all that stuff, but
yeah, not being critical of the judge.
No, I mean, we can be critical of the judge because he stepped into the politics and he's way off base because he's forgotten that what the system is. He's certainly entitled to his opinion. I understand his frustration, but he should know what it's all about. He needs to get off that bench and go down to one of these things and see how nuanced they are. But that's me saying it, not you, Commissioner. But the question I want to ask you is, how much is all of this frustration, particularly in the media, is a hangover left over from Caledonia and the agitators from there? Again, while some of them have good points, they've taken them too far. How much of you think is that? Well,
that's a big factor here. And certainly, without a doubt, in Caledonia, protesters took things too far. I mean, the right to peaceful process is one thing, criminal acts is another, and we'll deal with that. But this is all also related to 1995 in September, when our officers marched down a road in Ipperwash to get protesters off a vacant lot, because, darn it, they shouldn't be there. Well, you know what? They had a case before the court where maybe they should be, and maybe they did own it. In fact, I think the government gave them the property since. But the fact is, we marched down the road and took aggressive action to remove a protester, and whatever happened in those minutes to follow, when it was over, a protester was dead, and a whole bunch of citizens, community members, First Nations people, police officers were changed forever.
And some of those
police
officers are, you're right, and some of those police officers are dead as well now, and the stress of it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that changed the way we do business right across this country. And Justice Cindy Linden, who wrote the report in the Ipperwash Inquiry, totally endorsed our approach and our framework that we've developed to respond to these in a very measured and tempered way. And the use of force is a last option. And with judges signing injunctions, and that's their role, and I get that. I got many friends that are judges. They'll be signing injunctions till the cows come home if one of these goes ugly on us. And we've got railroads and highways blocked all over this country. You can write all the injunctions you want. We don't have enough police officers to start clearing every road in this country, and take lives, and then spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on inquiries and on and on. If we can all put up with a little bit of aggravation for a few hours till it's over, isn't that an easier sell?
Just before we take a break, we'll take a quick break. But before we do, I think that you need to explain, or I'm asking you. That doesn't mean you won't take aggressive action if necessary.
No, we have many times, and we don't get a lot of publicity when that occurs.
Well, you do get it if somebody dies, but the bottom line is that if the people in the field, whether it's Sarnia Police, OPP, or even up to the commissioner level or chief level, if it's needed to be done, it'll be done. It has nothing to do with what a judge says. No,
we do what's right and when it's the right time to do it.
When we come back, Commissioner Lewis is going to stay with us for a couple minutes. We're going to open the call, the phone's up if you want to talk to the commissioner. Ross Mclean is going to ask you some questions from a policing point of view. 416-872-1010, Star Talk 8255. I don't think that's right there. 8722. Is it changed? Star Talk 8255, I think it is. Text 71010. Sorry, Commissioner. Radio and newspaper man mixed together. We'll be right back on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010. Welcome back to the late shift. It's great to be with you. Commissioner is our guest here, Chris Lewis, and we've talked all about this situation, the one in Sarnia. We're going to get into Attawapiskat. Jennifer Tryon, from an investigative reporter for Global, is going to join us. And Commissioner, she had some trouble, so I don't know if you've heard about it, but you can either stay with us or listen in if you like. She's going to tell us, I don't even know what happened, but she was basically kicked off the reserve there today. So
I'm not aware of the details, Joe, other than what you've said.
Yeah, I don't know either. We'll get her to explain it. Ross Mclean, who you've talked to before, former Toronto copper, who helps me out on policing issues on the show and also from my columns. He's hot today. He's been on, we just saw him on CP24 commenting on a case in BC, and he was also on CTV, and now you're on News Talk 1010 with Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah, busy day, Joe. And I just want to start off by saying to the Commissioner, as an ex-copper, as a citizen of the city of Toronto, a person in Ontario, I just want to commend you for your leadership and coming out and not dodging any issues.
Well, thanks, Ross.
It's... if you have a spokesman, I don't even know their name. What I know is when there's a problem that faces us in this province, you're the guy who shows up, you're the guy who talks, and you're the guy who answers. You don't dodge questions. And I haven't heard so much common sense out of a leader of a major organization in such a long time.
Well, thank you. My wife paid you to say that, or
no? You know what? No one paid me to say that.
I know, Ross. Thank you.
I'm an ex-Toronto copper. And I love being a copper when I was doing it. I have lots of respect for police. I've been a law and order guy all my life. But, for much of the last 4 or 5 years, I've had some real problems with the way a lot of the policing has been done. And the thing that I loved here was, with all the demands being put on the police departments, what we've seen since the G20 to where we are now, people have learned, they've changed, and you talked about learning from Ipperwash.
Yeah.
And your example of leading by de-escalation and common sense, I don't think there's a finer way to police than through using the powers of persuasion and de-escalation, Joe.
Yeah, and it takes, if I can interject, Commissioner, before you answer that, it does take leadership, because you can see that there's the chicken hawk crowd that are on the sidelines, and I've been there myself.
Yeah,
you get frustrated. That. Yeah, you get frustrated and you want something done. But the reality is that what was done down in Sarnia and the other parts of this story was the right way, and yet you still get hit. So, it's wrong to criticize police, particularly the chief in Sarnia, who has done an outstanding job down there. And so, anyway, Commissioner, you know how we feel about it, and we're entitled to our opinion as well. So.
Well, for sure. And, it's we routinely close highways or roadways in communities for parades, for the Shriners Parade, for Santa Claus Parade. And that's all good. And peaceful protest, as long as laws aren't being broken other than the fact that they're on a road where they shouldn't be, which is a Highway Traffic Act offense probably at most, if we can do that and get the roads back open again, I still understand why people are frustrated by that, but it's just a reality of the situation. And we've learned by these mistakes where lives have been lost in Quebec and in Ontario and some scary situations in British Columbia. But it's frustrating for people, and I get that. One of our own officers said to me one time, if that was the Hells Angels blocking that road, we'd be out there within 10 minutes and we'd arrest them all. And I said, you're right, we would. But the Hells Angels don't have land claims before the courts. They haven't been arguing with governments back to the King England in the 1700s. They're not, they don't have all that history. They don't have any color of right whatsoever. And this is a different situation. The Hells Angels wouldn't have a bunch of elderly women and kids out there either. So the situation's different. We have to handle it differently.
And the Hells Angels haven't done anything like that.
No, exactly.
The Hells Angels are different.
To use that as an example.
No,
but
I think the reality is that you do lay charges in these situations. I don't think that there's anything. Yeah, I don't think there's anything. Even if there's things you could have done better, or that Chief Nelson could have done better down there in your after, you review it after. That's fine. I think what kind of grabbed me was the fact that this justice decided to, without knowing the nuances of the situation. I have heard no reports that he was there. I don't know for sure, but I don't think he was down there to see it. No one's seen him down there. Yeah, so it just seemed that he's like all of us. He has a bit of a, when he says something, it goes out there and goes viral, like with Don Cherry. And, you saw the stuff. We're going to talk about that a little bit later with your former boss, Chief Fantino, and the whole thing with Haiti. When they talk, people listen. Same with the judge, or even when you say something. But at the end of the day, we don't want to have people hurt when you don't have to have them hurt. And I think that's the only reason that I took this subject on the way I did.
For sure. And you know what? In an inquest situation, God forbid someone's killed, a police officer, a member of the public, the first question that's going to be asked is, how could this have been prevented? And it could be prevented by not doing it yet. Is there a time and a place to take action? Without a doubt. We have many cases, and we're criticized as soon as we do, and we're sued, and then everyone says, oh, my God, you're heavy-handed. Well, you know what? Sometimes we have to take action, and the reality of it is the use of force is dictated by the people that we're arresting. These are tough situations. And Commissioner Fantino, who we all know was a tough cop in many major cities in this province, when he came to the OPP, he struggled a bit at first with how do we allow this to go on and how long. And he quickly realized that this is not simple. This isn't just a couple of people on an empty lot saying, okay, we don't want to leave here today. There's hundreds of years of history and emotion involved in this. Whole different situation.
Let's take a quick call here from Kevin in Toronto, and then we'll let the commissioner get on to his evening. Kevin, welcome to the late shift. Good to have you. Hi. Ross Mclean is in studio, and Commissioner Lewis is on the phone.
Okay, Joe. So what the commissioner has basically admitted then, that there's two sets of laws, one for Native people and one for other people in this country.
No, that's not what I've said at all. The laws apply as the laws apply. How we enforce laws, we use discretion all the time. Whether it's a Native person or someone else, when they commit an offense, we can decide whether or not we lay a charge. We can decide when and where we make an arrest. And it's got nothing to do with race whatsoever. It's just circumstances. If there was 100 old ladies on the middle of the road that had nothing to do with First Nations communities, we're not going to go in there and arrest them all. We're going to use our discretion and do our best to get them off the highway.
Well, I don't want to bring up Caledonia at this time, but
we already have.
Bring it up. You got him now. You got him now. Go for it.
Well, are the laws applied there in Caledonia still going on since 2006? And
and you tell me what offenses are being committed in Caledonia and have been since 2006? Absolutely nothing that we haven't addressed at the time.
You know, Joe, I'll tell you something else about this, where the commissioner's coming from this. This is something I love about him. Everybody's got a role to play in this. You know, the police have to do the policeman's job. They're not the politicians. They don't do the politician's job. And the politicians don't do the policeman's job. And when it comes to the judges, they can do the judging, but don't try and be policemen. You know, everybody has to have their role to play in this, and I personally like the way that it's been taken. And this has been before the courts, the Indian Act and Aboriginal problems since Christopher Columbus came over here.
Yeah.
Well, you know, just before we clear, let's just clear up the Caledonia thing, because that's going to come up again. They're going to criticize the commissioner for that, as Kevin did, and it was a good call. I think I'm glad that he called in. But I don't think that people fully understand. I mean, I understand the frustration of the Caledonia agitators there that aren't from there, but it really is not quite what has been built. Am I wrong on that? I mean,
you're totally right, Joe, and it's a lot more complex than some reporters and some books have really led people to believe. And I understand the different perspectives here. And did we do everything right there in 06 when all this started? No, we didn't. We learned from it. We've changed our processes and our policies and our methods of operation since then, and we will continue to, because we learned from all of these things. But when Caledonia started, without a doubt, there was a severe criminal act there. Many charges were laid and put before the courts, and now the judges have the opportunity to decide guilt, innocence, and set appropriate penalties. But when the Ontario government bought that property from the developer and told the people of Six Nations, you can stay there till we settle this in court, from that moment on, and that was in 06, we didn't have so much as a trespass charge to lay. So we start laying charges when non-Native people are trying to go on there and start fights. Well, you're just picking on the non-Natives. Well, the Natives aren't doing anything illegal right now, whether you like it or not. That's the reality of the situation. So do we do everything right? No. Will we make mistakes again in the future? Without a doubt. That's the reality of hiring human beings, and we'll fix it, and we'll own up to it, and we'll be accountable when we do things wrong.
Let me ask you one exit question about photo radar. We're going to talk about the idea that Chief Blair has put forward about that and red light cameras, using it to write tickets for more than just red light stuff. What are your thoughts on photo radar coming back for Ontario?
I'm not opposed to it at all. I think that when photo radar first came out way back when, it may or may not have been for the right reasons. It does not replace police officers on the street. But without a doubt, if photo radar slows down one person and saves a life, then it's worth the investment. As long as people realize it's not a replacement for cops, we're just going to have cameras and photo radars out there now and not police.
Well, if it's for tax collection, I'm not for it. But anyway,
if it's just strictly a revenue issue, then that's not right. But I can't imagine a government doing that. I think government realizes the savings in saving lives from a financial perspective, besides the obvious of saving lives and injuries, is huge to society. So let's slow the people down.
Commissioner Chris Lewis, thank you very much. And you know what, folks? If you want to read the column that I've written on this, you can find it on TorontoSun.com and TorontoSun.ca. Ross, last word to you for Commissioner Lewis.
I just want to say have a great year. You're doing a great job. Keep it up, Ross. Because the way you lead is the way your men are going to follow, Commissioner.
And women.
And women, yeah. I always get stuck in that. I always get stuck in that.
He's an old-timer. He's an old-timer. Okay, all the best, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ross. Thanks,
thank
Joe.
you. You're listening to The Late Shift on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.